Requesting connection. Established. Encrypted. We're live. The show you've been asking for. Advice, technology, and community. Linux first, all others second. This is Ask Noah.
Live from Altispeed Technologies, the Ask Noah show starts right now. This is the show where we came to do all the things on Linux they said couldn't be done and take your questions on how to do the same. The phone lines are open this hour. To be a part of the program, it is a free call, 1-855-450-NOAH. That's 1-855-450-6624. Send an email to live@asknoahshow.com. My name is Noah Chalaya. I am your host. Delighted to be here with you as another episode of the Ask Noah show kicks off this hour. Joining me, my co-host, Mr. Steve Ovens. Welcome in, sir.
Hey, Noah. So, you know how I've been kind of tracking our show for a while. I store all of the show notes and I go back and I reference them. I even toss them into AI to be able to chat with our show.
You do. Sort of and then you have your AI show friends go produce a show about our show.
Well, that's kind of an aside. But so I was having this discussion with my wife. I thought you'd find this amusing. I haven't told Noah this yet. He just knows that I'm going to talk about it. So as listeners of the show will know that I have had a journey with Image, and it ended, and we went our separate ways. And so my wife on Sunday, maybe Saturday, she's like, you don't have to do anything about this now, but Image isn't working. And I was like, darling, I love you. Image hasn't been working for months. She's like, no, that can't be true. I just used it the other day. I'm like, no, it's been broken for months and months, right? And so I went back. I made the announcement that I was giving up on Image after it having been broken back in August, which means it had been broken at that point because it had been broken for several weeks. If you remember, I agonized over whether I should actually try and fix it before I just gave up on the idea.
Yes.
So Image has been offline, let's say conservatively, since middle of June. And it is end of November. And this is the first report I get of well, that shows how important that was. Although it was important enough for her to say it's offline. Right. So, I mean, she checked it, but
sure,
once every 6 months. So I thought you'd get a little chuckle out of that.
So what was it that she missed about Image? Because obviously it's not that's how she gets to her pictures, because she would have figured that out long before 6 months.
She wanted to be able to search her pictures.
I see.
And like all of our historical ones, right? Because it has all of our pictures from whenever, not just the ones she took on the phone. So
right.
She was looking for something specific and to send to somebody, and it wasn't there. And so I said, I will find something to do with that. So it's on my list. And NT Photos is on my list. And if not, I will plug my nose and go through Image again.
Interesting. So okay. So let me see if I can rephrase and make sure I understand this correctly. So Image was tried. Image was found left wanting. Image was let go. And
no, Image broke itself. And then I decided I wasn't going to put in the effort to fix it.
You know, when you say broke itself, you're kind of being generous, right? If I remember right, it was a database corruption thing, and they could have made it such that when you upgrade from one version to the other, I mean, they know how to work around the problem, but instead of actually fixing it or doing that, they just put a note in the release notes that basically said, hey, be aware of this and make sure not to go from this version to that version. Make sure to do this thing in between. Am I roughly on track there?
Yep. And the part of the reason why I missed it was, okay, yes, I didn't read every release note, but I jumped a release and I didn't think anything of it, because when you run package, if you've got a package, you just update your packages.
Sure.
Right. And so on an enterprise level, I know you should read every release note between now and the time that you have installed the software. But first of all, my carrying was low. And second of all, I haven't experienced a breakage like that in software in a very long time.
Right.
It was broken, and I took several swings to try and fix it and couldn't. Now, I'm not an Image person. I can fumble my way around a database. I wouldn't call myself a DBA, but I'm reasonably intelligent in that area and wasn't able to repair it within several hours of giving it a shot. So, sure, blame the end user. Absolutely. my fault. I did not read the release notes. I bungled something. I probably made it worse when I was trying to fix it, like 100%. But this is not enterprise software where you have consulting wing. This is like people like you and I installing it. And if it breaks, I understand it's complex. I'm not blaming the project, right? I'm not. I'm just saying that my expectation was misaligned with my experiences with complex projects such as Nextcloud. Generally speaking, their upgrades have worked. And even when there's been the odd one that has had some sort of hiccup, it's been relatively easy to, first of all, find the information that you need to fix it and then fix it. Otherwise, I'd be on here probably complaining about Nextcloud. So,
right. I don't know, man. I feel like to a degree, my rationale is that it is on the developer to at least, make you aware. I was trying to rack my brain where else this came up, but I had a similar situation in which there was going to be a breaking change, and they just had a thing when you went to do the update that said, "Hey, I'm going to make a stop at this version first, and then you'll have to do this twice because we got to make a stop at this version first, and then you can proceed on to go from here to there." And I went, "Oh, okay," and I hit enter, and it was fine. Why not do that?
You know who does it really well?
Who's that?
Home Assistant. If you're out of date or whatever, it pops up and is like, this is the bulleted point of the release notes, and like click here to get more, and like these are the like it pops up and right in your face. And it's also pretty darn good about telling you like it needs to jump through these hoops or whatever. Like that project's pretty solid in that regard.
Yeah, I agree. Here's the other thing. To your point about Home Assistant, Home Assistant came into my life by way of a fun project. Like I had no intention of really digging in. I had no intention of making it literally the center of my house. And I had so to that end, I threw it on whatever crappy Raspberry Pi I happened to have laying around. It didn't have a case. It had whatever SD card I had laying around. It had whatever power supply happened to be laying in my IT room. I mean, it couldn't have been a lower bar of not give a hoot. And oh my gosh, wouldn't you believe it was like it just kept working, and it's been working, and it just keeps working. And yeah, that's caught my attention a few times.
So tonight we're going to do something a little bit different. Noah is trying to flex his teaching ability, so he's been kind of coaching me. So instead of this being the Ask Noah show, this is the Steve Rants show tonight.
That's right. So tell me about Steve's Rants. How did we get here?
So I've been having a bunch of various technical journeys, some we've discussed here and some that just you and I have kind of chatted about. And so I wanted to do a couple of follow-ups on that. And normally when Noah and I and a couple of the producers get together, I've sketched out something in the notes, and I gather the feedback and I do that sort of stuff, and then we have a good chat about it. Or when Noah has something really burning, he's got tons of notes that we go over and we talk about it and stuff like that. So this week, I just kept writing. I just kept putting more and more stuff in there because some of it is Noah and I are friends, and this radio show is actually our excuse to socialize, honestly, if I'm being completely honest. And so some of this is just a couple of guys getting around and sharing an interest with each other when you know that nobody else around you has that same interest. And so I save things for the show so that we have something to talk about. But it's just things that I generally want to chat with, like, hey, I ran into this thing, or, hey, this was kind of interesting. What do you think we talk about this? So that's really how this came about. So some of the stuff that we were talking about, one of the things I wanted to just touch on briefly was we've been kind of following the saga for Google and their sideloading, right? And a while back, I think Noah had the episode written down here, but of course I'm terrible. 457.
Yep.
In 457, we gave a pretty good treatise to what damage locking down sideloading would do to the ecosystem, from everything from F-Droid coming out and saying we might not longer be a thing. We heard similar rumblings from other large projects. So we kind of covered that in fairly big detail in 457. But there's been some development recently where Google's come back and so I heard about this on a video and then I heard it about on a podcast. We have a couple of links in the show notes, but I couldn't find the actual like announcement from Google. Like we had the announcement from Google of they were going to restrict this, but they've started to backtrack on sideloading. Essentially, they're going to kind of hide it amongst some developer options so that those people who know can get at it. Whereas at the same time, they're trying to strike that balance of giving the nice, warm, and fuzzy feeling that you get from the Apple App Store. So what do you think about that, Noah?
I think this is the best of both worlds. So Google wants to be able to look its users in the eye and say, you are not less than if you choose us over Apple. And whereas Apple gets to say, I was trying to explain this to my kids. My daughter in particular she is, I'll call her Apple curious. Okay. And so she won't come right over the top and say, man, I think I want an iPhone, or I think I want a MacBook, or I think I want an iPad, but there's questions, right? And so the question got to be, well, why is it so bad that Apple has their walled garden, that everything comes? And so the way that I tried to explain it is, and the premise that she was taking was, my friends are in the Apple walled garden and they don't have any problems, and they're not upset that the Apple, has planned obsolescence and stuff like that. They don't feel like their phones just stop working someday and those sorts of things. And so the way that I tried to explain it was, yeah, Apple wants it to make it an enjoyable experience if you're inside of their garden. So if you step on the inside, you're invited in. You absolutely, there's no point. Of course, Apple isn't, you're not going to wake up someday and you're going to turn your iPhone on and all of a sudden it's going to say, this iPhone is out of date. You may no longer use it. Please see the nearest Apple store to buy a new one, right? That's never going to happen. Of course, once you're inside the garden, they want you to stay there. The problem is, first of all, they can kick you out. If you want any references to that, go look at the guy that's missing he spent millions. I want to say it was upwards of $1 million on content on iTunes. Apple shuts his account down, and all of a sudden, the movies that I'm using my air fingers quotes here, owned, are no longer available to him. He no longer has access to them. So if they kick you out of the walled garden, there's nothing you can do. You have no recourse. It's not yours. You don't have any right to be there. Second part of it is, they don't have to give you any input into what other players are in the walled garden. So you may want a product, a service, an app, a thing. And if Apple decides it is not welcome, then it is not welcome. And there is little to nothing you can do about that. That's the downside of being in the walled garden. So Apple is able to tell its users all day long and twice on Sunday, hey, it's a great experience inside here at the walled garden. We don't let criminals and bad people, we don't let hackers come in here. So if you're writing software, we ask you for an ID, we verify you, we make you pay a bunch of money, and then we let you post your app. So when you download an app on the Apple, on the Fruity, App Store, you can know that it is Fruity perfection because we told you so. And if it wasn't, we'd kick them out of the garden. You see how that works? And Google is looking over and saying, well, we don't get to say that. And so all of the bad actors flock to Google. And so Google has a problem on their hands. Undeniably, they do. And I get that. And I'm sympathetic to that to a degree. What Google, so far as I understand the announcement, what Google is saying is effectively, hey, if you want to publish on our store, on the store that Google produces and ships with Android by default and all the things, you come to us, you do the same process that Apple does, and just like Apple invites you into their walled garden, we will invite you into ours. And then just like Apple can say, don't worry, you may roam freely around the walled garden. No bad people are here. We promise. Google gets to say the exact same thing. Problem is, those of us who stand for maximum absence of coercion and privacy and all of the things that actually matter to technologists to brain cells to rub together, we look at that and say, wait, that's not cool. This is going to be problematic for app developers that care about privacy. And in a certain level of province, I was in the process of trying to mount some equipment this week, and lo and behold, wouldn't you know, I get a pop-up on my phone from one of my favorite apps. This is a great app that is essentially used by, it's an open source app. It has the ability to do a level. It has the ability to do a ruler, and really past that, it's plain, it's simple, it is harmless. And I go to open my favorite little open source app that I've been using for over 10 years, and I'm greeted with this message. Google has announced that starting in 2026, 2027, all apps on certified Android devices will require the developer to submit personal identity details directly to Google. Since the developers of this app do not agree to this requirement, this app will no longer work on certified Android devices after that time. Now, here's the thing. If you open that app, there's only 3 buttons on it. One switches the view so you can go from a bubble level to a ruler. The other one takes you into the settings, and the third one takes you into their GitHub repository where you can see they have been faithfully publishing this app and updates since 2014. So when I started to think about it, I thought, would I feel safer with being able to see all of the code that these guys have written since 2014, all of the issues that everybody else on the internet, on the open internet, has looked at and said, there's what isn't there is, hey man, I looked at this and this is doing some shady things. Hey man, I looked at this and I don't understand, why is this thing collecting this or doing that or accessing that library? None of that's there. So to a degree, do I trust the open source nerds on the internet who are concerned about privacy and security and all of those things? I do. Would I feel more comfortable if Google had these guys submit their government identification to them instead of just being able to see this guy's GitHub username? I would not. And so in the end, I looked at it and I thought, yeah, I wouldn't feel any safer. So this really doesn't do much to move the needle in my world. And the kind of people that share my values, the kind of people that do value privacy and all the rest of it, those people will be driven out of the Android ecosystem in service to people who are engaging in a quote-unquote security process that I'm not really sure gets me anywhere in the first place. And so it makes Google happy, there's no doubt about it. It checks the box, no doubt about that. And I suppose if you're, a Chinese or a North Korean actor that is trying to do naughty things in, underneath the hood on an app, you'll not be invited back in. Your app will get blacklisted or whatever. So I guess we have that going for us. But largely, that isn't a concern I've dealt with. And so to me, this is the best of both worlds. If you want to live inside of the Google world and you don't think for yourself, you just trust the big, huge company, which is, if you followed the Cloudflare thing this weekend, it goes great when we put the internet and the functionality of the internet inside the hands of 6 major companies, things go really well for us. It works really, really great. It's not the butt of IT jokes in the last few months. It's been going splendid. I think we should do more of that. So if that's you, by all means, go use the Play Store and download all your quote-unquote verified apps and make sure that you're only getting them from people that submitted their government identification to Google, because that's going to keep you safe. Awesome. Wonderful. All day long. For me, and those like me, now I can just install F-Droid and I can rely upon the thousands and thousands of people in the open source community that will review apps, that will look at code, that will open issues when there are problems, that will help contribute to fix those issues. And I don't really care what the person's government name is. What I care about is the quality of the code that they're writing. How's that?
Well, looks at the time. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, I don't have feelings on it at all.
So now that you're primed, I guess I'm going to lead you down another path. Okay. So It's similar, but you're primed for it. I have a feeling I know where this is going to go, but this is another topic that is only in the show docs, and Noah has not really any context. So this is fresh for him. So a little bit of context. As people know, I've been supporting a power user in my life, and they live quite a long ways away. It is not practical not even possible for me to go and drive there in a day. That's how far away they live. Okay. I call them a power-ish user because they were a Windows power user for years and took it on themselves to go install Garuda Linux, of all the Linuxes that you might possibly stumble across, on their desktop. And this is a continuing saga on that. So one of the things that is a challenge is when you have a bunch of software or hardware that has been built up for a platform. If you remember like those Win modems back in the day, they were a pain. You couldn't really get them to work in Linux. Mm-hmm. Maybe you could fiddle with them, but they're specifically Win modems, right? They're built for Windows and so on. There's this really fancy scanner that this person has, and it essentially it does 2-page scan at the same time, and you basically it looks like a desk light, like one of those desk lights that are an LED on a long, skinny pole that then juts out horizontally. You know what I'm talking about?
I don't know that I do.
So there are these. It doesn't really matter, but essentially, it's a cylinder that is like as wide as maybe 2 pens or maybe 3 pens together.
Okay.
And it goes up vertically, and then there's one that comes horizontally so that it comes out over the paper. And then it points down at the paper and it scans the paper. And the
okay. So it's essentially like a little camera.
yeah.
Okay. Yep. I'm with you now. Yep.
And so it uses proprietary software to do some sort of OCR as you can just flip the pages, right? It's pretty responsive. I've seen him use it. Like it's not, flip the pages like and you're done, but it's pretty quick compared to trying to scan like a regular book on a flatbed scanner. Anyways, it has Windows drivers. It was expensive. I don't know how much it was, but I'm told it was very expensive. So this power user reaches out and contacts support. Is like, hey, I'm running Linux. I don't know what version he told them. I don't know if support understood what he told them, but they sent him a deb package. And so he went on the internet and went and asked the AI, how do I install a deb on Arch or Garuda or whatever? And it gave him some process to convert the deb into an Arch Linux package. Not a make file, not a package file, nothing like that. Just like straight up trying to convert the binary, not binary, but the compressed file from one thing to another. And somehow it has a dependency on something that conflicted with just mainstream Mesa. Now, this user has an AMD card, and the AMD card requires Mesa. And so when he installed this thing and it said, hey, do you want to remove Mesa? He at first said no, but then the scanner drivers didn't install. So he did it again, and it said yes, and there go your drivers. So I get a very frustrated call, Linux just like can't see my USB ports. It just stopped responding to USB. And I'm like, well, thinking that seems kind of odd. I guess it's possible, right? Like, so I did a little bit of poking. I was like, okay, Mesa can impact the USB drives. Sure. It is possible. And so I was looking around and like, well, okay, that seems like it could be possible. And as I'm digging through, of course, this is where the problem with the power user is you don't get a full description. You get the end result of what they think they have come to the conclusion of, right? Because they're intelligent. They've searched it out. They've done a bunch of things. They think that they've identified the problem. And so instead of getting symptoms, you get the end result of what they think the problem is. This is the third time in 3 weeks where I've gotten the end result that was not actually correct. The diagnosis was bad, and therefore you start the troubleshooting on the wrong foot.
Sure.
End up logging in remotely, and I find that KDE is just pegging the CPU, just ridiculous. And so it wasn't an issue of that. When I killed KDE, he can type on the terminal. It was just that KDE was spinning so much it wasn't being able to respond to the USB devices, and so ended up tracking that back to the graphics driver. We got everything happy, and that was a frustrating experience for everybody, right? Just all around. So this brings me that, and now we'll remember the prime that you just had about Apple and the walled garden.
Yes.
Now here's my question for you, and this is the only thing Noah knows about this topic. When is a Mac actually appropriate? So thinking about remote support, this person plays the guitar, and they've got some guitar software that doesn't run under Linux. They now have this printer, this scanner that doesn't run under Linux. You and I'm sure, could get this to work. No, I'm positive. But the problem is that how do you support this on like remotely? If anything went sideways or it doesn't provide. The other thing is this person is sensitive to presentation layer. And so, as you know, I'm sure that you and I could just plug our nose and be like, you know what, the GUI's not terrible. It's not wonderful, but, we work our way through. You install Tesseract for OCI. Like, I'm actually sure that if someone was like, I'll pay you money to get this to work in Linux, I could do it. But it's not going to be the software that he wants to use, right? And so
sure.
I was like, well, at what point does it make sense to have, particularly a Mac, just be a almost like an appliance? And the reason why it's a Mac and not Windows is because this user is specifically choosing to move away from Windows because of Windows 11 and the invasion of privacy and all that sort of stuff.
Sure.
Right? And so while the Mac is not like the bastion of privacy, it is I'm sure his printer or his scanner will work on that. I already checked. It has drivers. I know that the software that he uses for his guitar is already there, right? Like, chances are the types of stuff that he wants to do at an appliance level, right? The things you need to just get your work done will be on the Mac. And so what would you do in this situation? When is it actually appropriate to like be pragmatic about your values and be like, you know what? For me, I'd slug through this. For you, I can't even just drive down. Well, I can't drive down the street and fix this, right?
Yeah, 100%. So let me start here. I don't believe that Macs ever fix a problem. I think they just kick it down the road. And here's my argument for that. I work with an organization that is entirely Mac-based. When I got there, every computer there was a Mac. And if you know anything about me, you know that's the best way to give me a compulsive eye twitch. And so I spent the first year just learning how to do everything the Apple way because I didn't have a choice. Like they're here, it's what they have, it's what we're using. The decision was made long before I got involved. And so maybe I can change it, maybe I can't, but today this is my job. And so now I have to deal with this, right? So the way that a couple of myths I want to put to bed. So the first is this idea of it just works, right? That I have, in my experience, I have found that couldn't be further from the truth. The amount of times that I have sat with people and had to troubleshoot simple, basic things like taking an HDMI cable, plugging it into the Mac and getting it to screen mirror onto the TV is mind-boggling. Then you get other esoteric, weird issues like, well, the screen mirroring works, but you can't get audio to go to the TV. And so there's just dumb little things like that work on every other operating system, on every other computer, something that literally would just work out of the box on Linux that doesn't work on Mac. And I'm like, wait, this is easy. Then you get to stuff like basic things that have worked on computers for 30 years, but Apple can't seem to get their head wrapped around this. Do you know how to take a screenshot in Mac OS? Command-Shift-3. What? Like every other computer has a print screen button and you just press it and then it prints the screen. But oh no, Apple has a better way, some esoteric key combination that you have to put in. But my gosh, Linux is hard, right? So there's some of the basic stuff that I immediately want to dismiss as like, it's not always the easier mousetrap. You'll deal with problems, you'll just deal with different problems. Go ahead, please.
Let me jump in here. If this was meant to be an all-purpose computer, I agree with you. Okay. First and second of all, like having had to interact with a MacBook for the first time, literally in my life with this client, I am on board with, yes, you're just going to fight different problems, right? You preach into the choir here. However, when like the challenge here is not, I'm not saying it just works, right? And I don't think that this user would also expect it to just work. He's banged his head against Windows he complains about Windows a lot. Like he's not a Windows lover. It's just, so he understands that computers take effort. I'm not worried necessarily about that. I'm thinking more about, let's say this scanner was $1,000, which is not unreasonable for the types of hardware that this person buys.
Sure.
You just say, well, I'm sorry, that's garbage. Or, like the types of things that I'm looking at are like, well, that hobby that you have with your guitar that you've been using for the last several years, well, you just have to abandon that as well. Yeah,
you want to find a way to yes, you don't want to have to tell people no.
Sure, right? And so like at some point, some of it is just I took several swings at I made a package file for this Debian, like for this Deb package and stuff like that. And it turns out that the one of the image files actually has security flaws around it that Arch Linux is specifically blocking, right? And again, this is a Deb from Ubuntu 1604. So like could I work around this? Maybe, like, and so the problem is like, well, do you just say, I'm sorry that you picked very poorly when you chose the software and hardware you chose?
Right. No, that makes sense to me. So again, I would say that to a degree, like let's take the route of the appliance. So yes, you put the appliance in and you install the software. My gosh, it just works right off the bat. It's beautiful. It does everything you want it to do. None of the esoteric things in macOS matter because they're either all shut off or basically just opens up and it's a full stream application. And effectively what you have is a really power efficient piece of hardware that's running a piece of software. It's awesome. Life is good. And to your point, now Steve is out of the tech support business. You can go back to your family. You can do the things that you want to do. And you're not on the phone every night with angry angry person who needs support to say, I need help. Awesome. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then 5 years later, all of a sudden you're going to run it. You're going to hit. And I've absolutely seen this happen. All of a sudden, one fine day, out of nowhere, you go to launch an application and it says, this application no longer runs because you need a newer version of macOS. So then you go to update macOS and macOS says, I'm sorry, you can't update macOS past this thing. You need to buy a new Mac. And so the only way to continue to use that piece of software is to then go spend another $1,000 or $2,000. And so to a degree, if you're okay with the hardware subscription model of it's an appliance and every 3-4 years I buy a new appliance and I budget the $2,000 or whatever it is to go buy $1,000, I suppose, if you're doing a Mac Mini. For a Mac Mini?
Yep.
Okay.
So there's one in my cart right now for like $470.
So you take the $470 and you just every few years you're going to buy a new thing and you're going to plug it in and you're going to repeat the process. If that's okay and we're cool with that, then we're cool with that. For me, I struggle with that. And I would struggle with that as a recommendation. Like if somebody wants to go do that, I would say, by all means, go do it. But then you don't need my help for that. You can go do that yourself. Where if they're asking me for my help, I want to solve the problem. So I want to go in and say, okay, so you have this guitar. What do you want to do with the guitar? Well, I want these effects and I want to be able to route it and I want to be able to record it and I want to be able to live play and I want to be able to overlay the lyrics that come out and those sorts of things. And then I want to go through and say, okay, well, have you tried Reaper? Have you tried Ardour? Let me show you how I've done that with, in my case, drums, but we can modify that to work with guitars. And oftentimes what happens is fairly quickly, I find myself hitting problems or questions that I don't know the answer to. And to that, my answer becomes, great, awesome. Let me connect you with some of the other people in the community that do that stuff more than I do. And so in the case, this just comes to my mind, there's a guy and he's in the Geek Lab that he eats, lives and breathes music. If you talk to him for 30 seconds, eventually the conversation will turn to music. And he has been a great resource to me anytime I've had questions about doing this thing on Linux. I can't get this driver to work. I can't get this thing. How do I make this work? Or how do I make this instrument work? Or how do I map this MIDI thing? Or how do I get this controller to work? And those sorts of things. Being able to ask those people how those things work has been really helpful. The flip side of that is if you have a group of people like this organization I'm working with where everybody's using a Mac, is there a benefit in the network effect? There absolutely is. If everybody's using the same thing and they can all ask each other those things, then by all means that can be a viable solution because then then everybody's screen looks the same, everybody's icons is in the same place, all the menus are in the same place, everybody's using the same piece of software, and you can all answer those questions. What I have done is I've made an intentional decision to remove myself out of those circles, right? And so if you come to me and say, here's another one of my favorite pet whipping posts for macOS, the print dialog. So if you install Adobe Reader and you install Microsoft Office and you install and then you have Chrome and you're using Canva. Okay. That's a fairly typical environment. If you go to print between those three softwares, there is, I want to say 3 to 4 levels deep of menus for the page configuration. So just to do something like, I want this printer to only print black and white, I don't want it to print off of the color toner, you have to go into the print dialog, and then it's a sub menu, and that takes you to a different dialog, and I want to say it's 3 or 4 deep before you finally get to one of the very many options that all kind of sound the same, that all kind of do the same, so you can figure out how to do that. Then you want to go and tell it that you want it to print double-sided. Well, that's the same thing, and you got to go through there. And you get done with that, and you think, okay, it was bad, but I got through it. It's a whole different dialogue when you open up a different application. And all of a sudden, now Adobe Reader is doing it one way, and Microsoft Office is doing it a completely other way, and Chrome via Canva is doing it a completely third. And so stuff like that gets to be the function of like, I don't know how you do that. Good luck to you, right? And so I find myself intentionally pulling myself out of that and saying, listen, I wouldn't design it this way. I wouldn't do it this way. And by the way, my laptop doesn't do that. I have one print dialog, whatever the system is, and I set it there, and all of the normal options of like print double-sided or collate or those things are right here. The color profile is right there, and so it's super easy and it's super simple and it's super direct, and I don't really have to think about it and I don't really have to do it. So if you want to dig 5 menus deep and follow a gigantic flow, best of luck to you. Here's the part that I understand, or here's what somebody else has demonstrated to me. So I'll be happy to share that with you. I'm not trying to hide it, but I have no idea how you would do that thing on your thing. And then I just kind of let them flounder about. And so what I've learned from that, what those experiences have taught me is a couple of things. One is I try to make an intentional point to make the open source path a less resistive path than the proprietary one. There's plenty of people out there. There's plenty of people on the internet. There's plenty of people on forums. There's plenty of paid professional support people from Adobe and Microsoft and all of the companies that would be happy to tell you how to make it work on your Mac. So from my perspective, if somebody else can do it, then I'm not needed. It's not my forte. It's not my expertise. Not my passion, and I'm not really required. So go buy Mac.
Exactly.
So yeah, so I mean, if the goal is to push that person or to put them out on the boat so that, hey, here's a fishing rod, here is a boat, best of luck to you, hope you come back with some fish. I don't know that I'm telling you that's a bad way to go. I would be quick to follow that up with saying I've certainly never done that, and my rationale for that is, well, part of it is obviously there's a business model around, I want people to bring the boat to my dock, so I got that going for me. But then the other side of it is, I do believe that there is a higher purpose. I was put on this planet to teach people how to leverage their technology to its full advantage and to leverage it in a way that puts them in control of it. And I don't believe for a split second that Apple allows them to do that. So that's why I don't go that route.
So I think we'll wrap this up, but I wanted to say that where I hear what you're saying, and I've never bought a Mac. I haven't used Windows really in my house at all since Windows 7, and even then it was to support my wife. So all that aside is like I make that choice for myself. But when I'm thinking about the types of users that this person is versus the type of user that you are interacting with, you're not interacting with a power user, it sounds like, and so they're not going to give up Linux on their primary desktop. In fact, they are more committed than I would have thought them to be to get this to get things to work on their Linux desktop. That's why they've been breaking it, right? They're going to try and make it work. But at some point, my inner struggle is like, well, I don't see like a Mac Mini any different than, hey, the scanner actually has this little hub that it comes with, and you just happen to plug the hub into your monitor so that you can see it when it's doing its thing. Like, in my mind, I haven't tweezed that apart. And so when it comes to like, I have this thing, and do I make this thing e-waste that was really expensive, or do I open up a path for that? That's I guess where my inner struggle is. I'd be interested to hear from the audience, what is your thought around this? Is pragmatism the wrong way to go here?
Yeah, absolutely. Live at AskNoahShow.com, right in. The only thing I will add to this discussion is you had talked about, doing remote support. I've had tremendous luck with Simple Help, to the point that I don't know if I could go back to not using it. And it's funny because we have a saying at Altispeed that is, if there is a proprietary piece of software, it's just a placeholder until we find a open source alternative that will do it, right? And every so often, and I have a group of people that do a lot of remote support, and I run options by them, and I'll say, hey, here's what I think is I'm thinking about replacing Simple Help with. Do you think this would work? Do you think this would work? And it's funny. I get everything from flat out laughs of like, funny, to yeah, it's close, not quite there yet, right? But Simple Help makes it such that you double click on the computer and you are seeing what the user is seeing. And whatever actions you could take if you were physically sitting in front of it, you can physically take from there. And then, the stuff that you would expect, file transfer, those sorts of things. But being able to remotely reboot by all of that stuff just makes it a pleasure to do remote support. So other than having a user unplug or replug stuff, if that needs to happen, I really don't find it very challenging at all to do that remotely. And we have entire offices that we visit. We do site visits twice a year, but past the planned site visits, everything is done remotely. And I've never found that to be an impetus.
So you can't do the BIOS stuff though, right? Because the software has to be running in the operating system, correct?
That's true.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
although I have an answer for that too. There is PyKVM for doing.
Sure. Yeah. If you can get to the PyKVM. Yep. So on a last thought on that, I've been using Tailscale. Pick your thing of choice, but I've been using Tailscale because you can have a person share a computer with another tailnet and even a computer on another tailnet. And so if the computer comes up and it has a network, internet speeds, at least in my experience in this day and age, are fast enough to support XRDP. And so that's essentially, I go in via SSH, and if I really need to see what they're doing, I use XRDP.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Again, a placeholder until an open source thing comes along. If there's an open source way to do it, I have no burden to convince you to use a proprietary tool to do your thing, like at all. So please do not hear that. But if you find yourself getting to the point where you're like, man, I think this is, it's challenging to support this thing remotely, and I think that's difficult. What I think I'm hearing you say is not so much I find it difficult to support this thing remotely. It's I'm sick of supporting it, period, remotely or otherwise. Well,
it's more like the system is being broken because we're trying to finagle Windows knowledge into a Linux thing, specifically for things that are not supported, right? Mm-hmm. Like he got Steam going and all the rest of that. He went and set up a Samba server on his own, like the things, right? He's doing it well. It's just that when there is a path of resistance, such as a driver or a thing that I can't get to work with Linux, that's when things are breaking, right? Because we're trying to I got these other things to work, so I'm just gonna shove this in and get it to go.
How would you feel about? So is it primarily the scanner and the guitar thing?
Are those currently? Those are the current things, but I feel like I will have other support-ish calls like that.
And so your thought process goes something along the lines of if he just goes and gets a Mac, then just I'm out of the support game.
No, I will continue to support because he'll ask me hey, can you look at the Samba config? Or there's been a couple of times where he's like, hey, can you look at this container? He spun up paperless in a container and installed Dovecot. And so power-ish user, I'm happy to support those sorts of things because I can replicate that in my environment. But sure. I don't have that scanner and I don't have that guitar thing and whatever, right?
So what would be wrong with remoting into his computer, saying plug that scanner in and let me see if I can find a piece of software that sees it or makes it work?
Well, because I can't actually do some of the stuff that is required for it, right? Like if you have to unplug the thing, or I have already done remote and tried to make the scanner work. But the issue was he tried to make it work and broke the system doing so. Right? He's not going to call me because this is a man who went and figured out how to install Dovecot, right? And then paperless and stuff of that nature. Installed Samba and configured that. And so intelligent, right? And he can do these sorts of things. So I'm not going to change this person to say, pick up the phone before you try to install a deb on your Arch. That's not going to fly, right?
Is there any room for hey, make a snapshot? Because, let's set you up with ZFS, make a snapshot before you go playing so that we can go back to a place of stability while I help you sort through this thing?
Yes, I think so. However, the challenge here is that I tried to encourage him to install Arch with my playbook that would do that, but he likes Garuda and the way that they do things. And in this particular case, the system was broken because while it does have Snapper and Btrfs on there, in his fiddling, he basically blew, he rolled past. It only keeps five of the previous snapshots. And so he blew way past that. By the time that I got and looked at the snapshots, First of all, you actually have to be physically at the machine in order to do that. On ZFS, I could roll them back and then reboot the box and have it boot into the right snapshot or whatever. But with the way that it is with Snapper, I tried to do that remotely, but I couldn't. As far as I can tell, you have to be at the grub prompt and select the right thing. But anyways, the whole point of that is that might have been an option, but rolling back the root partition is tricky when they're troubleshooting for themselves.
So here's the part I guess I'm getting. At least I would put my foot down. Is so. He's got a preference on which distro of Linux to use, but he's not willing to take your thoughts or your advice on which distro to use, but he's willing to take Apple's exclusive whole hog, take it or leave it solution.
I haven't offered that to him. I'm chatting with you first. I was trying to get you to talk me off a ledge. You haven't succeeded.
Here's if I was to take a more direct approach, you're going to back yourself into a thing where not only are you going to be continually supporting or trying to fix things, but you're going to be doing so with limited domain knowledge and for something that you also can't replicate in your environment, unless your plan is just to tell them good luck to you.
Well, that'd be largely it. It'd be like, well, you've got an Apple store in your city and, the vendor should support that. Like ultimately, I'm thinking the vendor has to be able to support this. If they give you drivers and the drivers don't work, you can talk to support.
I see. So it's a function of demarcation, not so much enabling you to provide better support or lessening the burden for support.
Correct. It's just like, hey, I can't help you with this. Like if your drivers don't exist, you can go talk to the manufacturer. If they don't work, like that's the manufacturer's problem.
So if that's your position, then what I would then what I would do is then my approach would be, what, Steve? There's a function of knowledge that you don't want to obtain for yourself and that a problem you don't want to solve?
No,
that's
new.
I don't
have that thing. I don't have that thing. How am I going to troubleshoot a scanner or a guitar thing that I don't have?
Well, could he ship it to you for a while and you play with it and get it to work and then make him a run book of here's how to get this thing to work and then ship it back?
Maybe.
Here's another thing. And I've only done this a handful of times because it's kind of a big ask. But the other thing I've had some success with is every once in a while I'll have a user, they'll have a piece of hardware or a thing, and they struggle with getting a thing to work, and it's above my level. And so I'll reach out to a developer or I'll reach out to the project leader, whoever, and the answer I get back from them is, well, exactly what you're telling me. I don't have that piece of hardware. I can't do that. Sometimes you can go to other people in the community that do have that hardware and say, hey, I need to borrow one of these for a little bit so that I can facilitate this working. And I don't do it very often because I understand it's a big ask, but I've never hit a no. Like I've always found either sometimes the manufacturer is willing to say, hey, I'm trying to make this work for a user and I need a thing. I don't need to keep it, but do you have one and a lot of them have their own products. A lot of them have it on a bench that they use for their doing support when they're walking customers through, or they have extra ones, or they've got demos, or they've got ones that go out to conferences and stuff, and they'll just give you one for free and let you play with it and get it to work. And then you send it back to them when you're done, kind of a thing. But I want to circle back to this. My argument, my strongest argument, I think, would be that if you solve this problem one time, you solve it for him forever, because nobody's ever going to pull the rug out from under him. If we go with what we were calling the appliance route, you kick the can down the road 5-6 years, but then he's got to do it all over again.
Yeah, maybe the thing will break in 5-6 years.
But then
betting on obsolescence here.
But then we haven't solved a thing.
Oh, we solved the thing. Absolutely. It's just the definition of done is sliding. Come on, Noah. You know how this stuff works.
It's never feature complete. It's always evolved. Sure. Yeah. Good luck to you. I hope I'm going to keep hoping that something wakes up inside of you that motivates you to say, hey, I'm going to find a creative way to get this thing in front of me and make it work just because I want to make it work. I have absolutely no doubt if it was sitting on your desk, the problem would be so tempting that you're not wrong when you say you'd get it to work. You would do it out of sheer obstinance of no, you will submit to what I'm telling you to do.
Yeah, I mean, we have a story probably for next week or later that is directly related to that. I'm looking at you, Firefox.
Steve got real friendly with Firefox, real up in its business.
No comment.
That's coming. So there's a reason. There's a tease. Is that coming up next week or the week after? We will have a great adventure, and Steve's going to tell you why he absolutely loves Firefox, but started to have tempting eyes for Chrome.
Not tempting eyes, just like why Firefox? Why? I legitimately love Firefox. So this is not a Firefox bashing session out of anger. It is out of love. Please fix this.
The phrase that you used that I thought was pretty cool is like, what did you say? It's like going to a friend's house, knocking on the door, and they slam the door in your face until you go around to the back.
Yep, that's exactly what I felt like. Why?
All right, let's do this. Let's get the Newswire in here before we run out of time.
From the Linux Newswire newsroom, this is the Week in Review with JT.
For the week of November 23rd, 2025, here's the Linux and open source news. Git 2.52 is out. CMake 4.2 is now available. The Blender team has announced the release of Blender 5.0. PHP 8.5 is now out. And the open source community project Proton Drive has released version 1.2. In distro news, Proxmox 9.1 is now available. The Alma Linux team has announced their 9.7 release, and Phoenix 251 is now available. In open source hardware news, the Pebble Watch software is now 100% open source, and Eric has released the electrical and mechanical design files for the Pebble 2 Duo. And lastly, in retro gaming news, Microsoft makes Zork 1, 2, and 3 open source under the MIT license.
Thank you, JT. I appreciate him and his ability to put the Newswire. So, Steve, it's maybe we fit all this into next week, but it actually might be a week or two of Steve rants, because you had quite the technological extravaganza this week.
Yeah, I suppose to tease it out a little more, was anybody who's interested in networking and proxies and firewalls and that sort of stuff, that's what we're getting ready to delve into next week, and some of the adventures of why you might be interested in that, and why it's just good, and some of the eye-opening stuff that I discovered, which some people were very surprised at, and some people are like, yeah, I knew that was happening already. So I think that's kind of interesting to see where our audience falls on the scale of I knew this was happening or I'm surprised that was happening.
I think that's going to dovetail super nice into our discussion last week about learning the things you didn't know that you needed to know, kind of a thing, and learning things at a level that makes you able to teach them because you understand them at such a high level. So make sure to come back next week. Music in our ears indeed means we're out of time. I appreciate you joining us. We record the show every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Central. You can download the latest episode or any of them going all the way back to episode 1 by going to podcast.asknoahshow.com. There you'll find not all of the articles and resources that we use to make the show, but again, the entire back catalog all the way back to episode 1. You can follow us on Twitter, on X. The show is at Ask Noah. Show, Steve Evans, at Linux Ovens. You'll find me at noahz.us. We're back next week, 6 p.m. Central, asknoahshow.com.